Well, I'm going to jump back into classical computing for just a little bit and leave the quantum world behind for a bit. I was asked to talk about international research collaboration for the semiconductor industry, which is a fantastic topic, and I really enjoy talking about this. For starters, I just want to affirm the topic. It is very important for this industry to consider where it makes sense for us to be looking to international partnerships, organizations around the world, companies that operate around the world for what projects are appropriate for us to be solving together and what we ought to be solving here at home on our own. Furthermore, I'd say that there are some areas where collaboration is just going to happen regardless of government interventions, and that's probably not where we need our government resources to be focused. What we're looking for is we're looking for these areas where collaboration otherwise wouldn't happen, or it would be happening too slowly. As has been mentioned earlier today, semiconductor industry is an incredibly complicated industry, and no country should be thinking about going about this entirely alone. We have to collaborate, and that will be the fastest way to make sure that we can continue to make these products for a very long time, as long as we want to. This industry has collaborated on R&D extensively for decades, for almost our entire history. We've done this informally and on an ad hoc basis, and we've also done it through a number of formal mechanisms as well. People love to talk about Moore's Law, and so we can talk about Moore's Law for a little bit. They like to talk about this when they talk about the semiconductor industry, particularly for innovation in R&D. And what they generally tend to understand about Moore's Law is that this has a lot to do with doubling the number of transistors every couple of years that are found on a chip. But there are some elements to Moore's Law that I think can tend to get overlooked, and they're pretty important. And the first one is that there's absolutely no physical reason that Moore's Law must exist. Moore's Law held because the industry, collaboratively, internationally, decided that it should. And how did we do that? Well, this gets to a second thing that I think is oftentimes overlooked with respect to Moore's Law, and that Moore's Law is actually an agreement that many parties made across the entire industry for how we were going to innovate and how we were going to pursue advancements. The agreement was that we were going to advance this industry by shrinking transistors and smashing more of them onto a piece of silicon. Is this the only way for the industry to innovate? Certainly not. There are a lot of ways that we could go about this, but that's what we chose for a pretty long time. And so what this did is it caused everyone to kind of grow together. Your tool providers were focused on making tools that could pattern smaller and smaller things. And your design firms were also trying to figure out how could we put more and more transistors onto a piece of silicon. So there was this synergy that really helped everybody win. Maybe another way of putting this is, actually, sorry, I just talked about that. Mechanically, how did the industry do this? How did we bite off this international R&D collaboration? Well, we did it through something called the International Technology Roadmap for Semiconductors, or ITRS. And in generating each subsequent iteration of ITRS, stakeholders from all across the ecosystem got together and made some decisions together. What materials they were and weren't going to use, the purity requirements for that, the geometries that were going to be needed to make the next generation of devices, and what wavelengths of light we would use for lithography, et cetera, et cetera. Now, more germane to this conversation, I really want to foot stomp on the fact that this was an international technology road mapping exercise, very international. Companies from around the world, governments from around the world took great interest in this so that they could get the benefits of what others were doing in the ecosystem, and that was enormously successful. ITRS was all about two-dimensional scaling. And now the industry is sort of looking to some new frontiers of innovation. So ITRS is no longer an exercise that we're doing. We've looked at some other fronts for this. One of my favorite things that people talk about when they talk about Moore's Law is they like to spend a lot of time trying to figure out if it's alive or dead, which is kind of a funny question. Of course it's dead. It's over. Computers are as good as they're ever going to get. We can all go home now. We did it. Done. Of course that's not true. There is still runway left in two-dimensional scaling, and there will be for some time. But I want to point out very candidly that Moore's Law that the important thing about Moore's Law was not that we needed transistors to be smaller, it's that we made computers better because we could get more transistors and computing elements onto a chip. it was always a proxy for performance and, to an extent, power consumption and energy efficiency as well. When we shrank feature sizes, we got more powerful processors to manage larger and more complicated workloads. But, and this goes back to a point I made earlier, there are other ways of innovating to improve our processing capabilities. A lot more. And those are the strategies that we're turning to as two-dimensional scaling begins to slow. But these other innovation frontiers are quite powerful. In many ways, the innovation aperture is opening up, and this creates both some excitement and some risk. Excitement because there are more ways that we can improve our products, and we are doing this. Which is going to be incredibly good for our industry. And we're actually forecasting that we can scale from just over $500 billion where we're sitting now to over $1 trillion by the end of the decade. There's a lot of innovation happening in this industry. And this gets us to the main reason why we need to collaborate now. For decades, everyone was sort of rowing in the same direction around this pursuit for miniaturization. But now, when we move into different sorts of architectures, putting transistors together in different connections and arrangements and arrays, full stack innovation, where it's not all about just what's getting fabbed on a piece of silicon, but what is the agreement like across the software stack? This requires collaboration in a way that we haven't previously had to achieve before. The good news is that we're already doing a lot of this incredibly important road mapping together. There is an organization called the Semiconductor Research Corporation, and in the absence of ITRS, once that was disbanded, they got stakeholders from across the industry together, American and from friendly and allied nations, and they articulated what they called their decadal plan. And this was really a statement of problems. What are the 5 big grand challenges that this industry needs to be looking at in the next 5, 10, 20 years if we're going to continue making our products better and continue to make all of that feasible? So that decadal plan came up with 5 grand challenges. It was a statement of problem. Subsequent to that, the Microelectronics Advanced Packaging and Technologies Roadmap, or MAP-T roadmap, really described how we were going to go about running down those problems. And as you might expect, a lot of this does pertain to advanced packaging and heterogeneous integration solutions. I'd also point out that this is well beyond logic. There are analog and mixed signal technology road mapping elements in here. There are memory roadmaps in here as well. And so it's quite extensive. Over 100 organizations participated with over 300 participants. So quite a lot of broad buy-in there. And this is very timely because it turns out while we were doing a lot of these exercises, governments around the world were making investments in their own R&D and how they were going to continue to support this industry. So the question now is, how do we take these roadmaps and put some muscle behind them so that we can actually accomplish what they've set out to do? It's also worth mentioning that while countries are making these grand investments, they are actually quite small in comparison to what the private sector itself is deploying. We are in an industry that reinvests 20% of our revenues back into R&D. So if you remember, $500 billion from just a little bit earlier on in my talk, that's over $100 billion of money that the industry is spending every year on R&D. And when we get to the end of the decade, that'll be $200 billion. Spending that money well, spending that money in ways that will actually accelerate our product cycles can be a difficult venture, and technology road mapping and collaborating with our partners is going to be very important so that we know that we're putting our money where we can actually produce benefit in the industry. Another reason why it's important for us to collaborate with our friends around the world is that research tends to make it, tends to make it easier when it comes time to do business together. If we developed these technologies together, if we forged partnerships and we wrote standards together, it's easier for us to do business when these reach commercial maturity. Another reason for us to collaborate on R&D is that there are smart people and world-leading experts broadly, not just in any one given country. And we want to access those most cutting-edge learnings and technologies, and we want our smartest people to have the resources they need to do the best work they can. Certainly, we have a robust brain trust in the United States for R&D, and we have extensive R&D facilities. We want our scientists to use those. We want scientists from our friend and allied countries to be able to use those as well. Also, there are new research capabilities, as you heard about from Susan and Jay a little bit earlier, being stood up. I won't take too much more time to add on to what they already said, except for that we need to manage the amount of overlap that these different facilities have. It's not that there can be no overlap. Certainly we want the NSTC to produce a unique value, but also some of these problems are really hard, and the more shots on goal we can take, the quicker we'll find solutions that are actually going to solve our problems. Just a quick note that there are some areas of technology advancement that may not be appropriate for international collaboration, particularly when we get into technologies that are pertinent to some of our most national defense and national security technologies. Of course, it's going to make sense in these instances for us to be cautious about who we partner with, both internally and also internationally. In these instances, we might choose to keep technology development limited to the relatively small number of stakeholders, and that's appropriate for those bilateral, trilateral organizations rather than wide open partnerships. I'll leave you with a little bit of context for what it is we're doing here and why it's so important that we work well together. In the history of our industry, we've done some pretty impressive things. The fact that we can pattern a transistor on the order of just a few nanometers is quite remarkable. The fact that we can pattern billions of them, all with uniformity and precision, right next to each other, working together to execute a common compute workload, is just absolutely astonishing. And the fact that we can do all of this at a price point that is accessible to modern consumers is, for my money, humanity's most impressive technical achievement. And we're not done. There's a lot of runway left in this industry for many decades to come. This is an industry that keeps innovating around the impossible problems, and they are no longer impossible. In this next chapter, we're actually accelerating our product development. In spite of the fact that science is just getting more and more difficult, staggeringly so, we're able to do this and able to figure out our problems because we work together, which is something that is going to enable acceleration for a while. Thank you.